Now, I like to keep an eye on things north of the border. The Scottish First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has been urged to refer himself to a ministerial code advisor. That's after he was accused of knowingly misleading Parliament. Mr Yousaf allegedly asked civil servants to engineer statistics on renewable energy. Opposition MSPs have suggested that civil servants retrospectively created statistics to justify an incorrect statement the First Minister made about Scotland's renewable energy capacity. Officials have denied accusations of any cover-up. So I want to talk to columnist at The Scotsman, Alistair Stewart. Thank you very much for joining me, Alistair. Can you tell us a little bit more about this story? What's the alleged wrongdoing here?
No, it's an interesting one. The accusation is that Mr Yousaf misled the Scottish Parliament with figures about renewables figures, and then he subsequently allegedly advised colleagues and the civil service to subsequently revise the official record, adding them in after the fact. But while these are allegations at this juncture and at this stage, it feeds into a wider problem that Mr Yousaf has, and that is that the overall feeling that he's not quite got a control of his brief, certainly not as much as his predecessors, notably Nicola Sturgeon. Most new leaders have a free period almost where they can establish themselves and look forward with a programme of government to what it is that they want to achieve. He's been in post since March, and this just feeds the fire that he's not breaking free of his predecessors, and he's not taking the SNP any closer to their aim of Scottish independence.
Well, no. In fact, many people would say that he's doing quite the opposite when it comes to independence. More Scottish people have been turned off the idea, it seems, since he became Minister. Do the polls reflect that?
They do, certainly. They're oscillating, where previously you could always count on a poll to say that there was some support for Scottish independence. Only a couple of weeks ago, the polls were showing that the SNP were breaking even with Scottish Labour, which was quite the achievement for them. And there was a poll the other day saying that he's now 11 points ahead. There's no clear trajectory, no clear break, I think, in the minds of the electorate as to the SNP, Scottish independence and Humza Yousaf. I think if you ask different people what they think of these three different things, you will get a different answer every time. The key thing with this is the SNP's own supporters. How is it that Mr Yousaf is advancing Scottish independence? He's not taken the party any closer to even a conversation about that. Their own conference is taking place in October, where there's a discussion about making the next general election in Scotland the most seats will be a mandate to enter negotiations with the UK government. The likes of Alex Salmond have come out and dismissed that as an idea. There's no forward movement for a party that prides itself on taking steps, sometimes baby steps, but nevertheless steps in the right direction towards that coveted holy grail of independence. It feels very much like a government, if not in free fall, then certainly one that's stagnating. And Mr Yousaf taking on the mantle of First Minister has not reinvigorated either the Scottish government led by the SNP or the independence movement as a whole.
Well, some of us could have predicted that. Thank you very much indeed, Alistair Stewart, a columnist at The Scotsman. Thank you very much for your insight there. So to my panel, Joe Phillips, Humza Yousaf, many nicknamed him Humza Useless because he hadn't shown great competence in previous ministerial posts. Continuity candidate for Nicola Sturgeon to succeed her.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the sudden resignation of Nicola Sturgeon caught everybody off guard, including her own party. And I think what Alistair was saying just now is that, you know, it's very difficult for anybody to follow somebody who was such a good communicator. You know, whatever you think of her politics, she was an extremely good and effective communicator. She had a very, very good manner about her, and she was very charismatic. Her sudden disappearance and the questions that then arose have already put a huge cloud and many question marks over the SNP, which of course will be music to the ears of Labour and the Conservatives, particularly Labour, who will be hoping to claw back some of the seats that they've lost at the next general election. But it's really straightforward, Emily. It's not the getting it wrong that does for you in politics. It's the cover-up. You know, if you make a mistake, you just stand up and say, I'm really sorry, I misspoke, the figures were wrong.
It's pretty bad, actually, David. So he was at First Minister's questions. He said Scotland has the majority of renewables and natural resources in the UK. Okay, turns out it's actually a quarter. It's then alleged he goes and talks to his civil servants and say, how can I, move around the statistics a bit so I actually got it right? I mean, how untrustworthy is that?
Yeah, I think he should just own up and say, look, I got it wrong. And he sounds like someone who's been promoted to the level of incompetence. Like he's not up to the job, basically, because he's not getting the figures right.
Over-promoted, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well over-promoted. And the cover-up he did, I mean, from a mathematical point of view, I mean, I've got a background in science, it doesn't make any sense. He said, no, what I meant is we have more per capita. But he's comparing two completely different things there. So, the cover-up was wrong. It was just ridiculous anyway.
Just say you make a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you remember when he was absolutely furious when there was a video posted of him falling off a scooter?
Yes.
And he wanted the BBC or whoever it was that posted it to take it down. He does not like to get things wrong or be humiliated, embarrassed in any kind of way at all.
Politics is the wrong job, isn't it?
Quite. You have to have a bit of a tough skin.
Absolutely.
You can't be embarrassed too easily. Everyone makes mistakes. I mean, it's like the broadcaster life here.
Well,
but it does look like there could be a bit of an SNP, well, let's not say wipeout, but they're going to struggle.
I think they're going to struggle, and I think, as Alistair was just saying, they're not necessarily in free fall, but they have certainly lost their raison d'etre, if you like, and if they're not talking about independence. And the danger is always that then people look at their record on other things like health and transport and education and funding, where they haven't been so good. So I think under Nicola Sturgeon, they managed to create a very good illusion of running things terribly well and being very effective and punching above their weight. I think when you take that leader away, what you see is actually...
Oh, yeah, Nicola Sturgeon was very good at deflecting from any of her failures, very good at blaming everything on Westminster, wrongly or rightly, and very good at, promoting herself, promoting the SNP, which was, of course, her job, and keeping things on the question of Scottish independence. Humza Yousaf seems to be flailing.